Man, I don't know about you guys, but every time it feels like the Sixers are finally getting a chance to catch their breath, something happens that completely changes the conversation around this team. And today, we've got not one, but two major stories that every Philadelphia 76ers fan needs to be paying attention to. One of them could have a huge impact on the Eastern Conference race before the season even starts. The other suddenly changes the way a lot of people are looking at one of the biggest concerns surrounding this franchise right now. And honestly, both stories leave us with some uncomfortable questions about where the Sixers stand compared to the rest of the league. Because while everybody keeps talking about what Philadelphia needs to do this summer, things are happening around the NBA that could directly affect the future of this team, whether we like it or not. Some fans are going to be frustrated. Some fans might actually feel a little relieved. But either way, these developments put even more pressure on the organization heading into what feels like a massive offseason. Before we get into all of it, do me a quick favor and hit that like button if you live and breathe Sixers basketball. And if you're new here, my name is Henry. This is 76ers Daily News, and we're still a brand new channel trying to reach our first 1,000 subscribers. So if you're a real Sixers fan and want to be part of this community from the very beginning, make sure you're subscribed. We'd love to have you here. Now let's talk about what's happening because these two stories could end up being a lot bigger than people realize. Alright, Sixers fans, let's start with the first story because this one is frustrating, and honestly, it's the kind of development that can change the entire landscape of the Eastern Conference. For months, the NBA world was consumed by one question. What was going to happen with Giannis Antetokounmpo? Every fan base had an opinion. Every insider had a prediction. Every contender in the East was watching and hoping for a specific outcome. And if you're a Sixers fan, the ideal scenario was pretty obvious. Either Giannis stayed with the Milwaukee Bucks and continued trying to carry a team that looked like it was slowly losing ground in the conference, or he ended up getting traded to the Western Conference, where Philadelphia wouldn't have to deal with him nearly as often. Instead, neither of those things happened. Giannis Antetokounmpo is now headed to the Miami Heat. And guys, that's a problem. A big problem. The Sixers weren't directly involved in the trade discussions. They weren't bidding against Miami. They weren't trying to acquire Giannis themselves. But make no mistake about it, Philadelphia absolutely loses from a competitive standpoint. Before this move, the Heat were stuck in a difficult position. They weren't bad enough to bottom out and rebuild. They weren't good enough to be viewed as a true championship threat either. Now everything changes. Miami suddenly has Giannis Antetokounmpo leading the way alongside Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins, and Norman Powell. That's a completely different level of team. And from a Sixers perspective, one of the biggest concerns is what that frontcourt could look like. We've spent years talking about the advantage Joel Embiid gives Philadelphia against most teams in the league. When Embiid is healthy, very few teams can match his size, skill, strength, and overall impact. But now you're talking about dealing with Giannis and Bam Adebayo together. That's not an easy matchup for anybody. Even if Joel Embiid is healthy and playing at an MVP level, the Sixers won't have the same overwhelming frontcourt advantage they've enjoyed against so many opponents over the years. And that's why this feels like Philadelphia's first major loss of the offseason. Not because Daryl Morey or the front office did something wrong. Not because the Sixers missed out on Giannis, but because one of the biggest rivals in the Eastern Conference just got significantly stronger. And the timing couldn't be worse, because now all eyes immediately turn back to Philadelphia. The pressure was already high after everything that happened last season. The questions surrounding Joel Embiid's health haven't gone away. The concerns about Paul George haven't gone away. The uncertainty surrounding the roster hasn't gone away. And now Miami just raised the bar. The message is simple. If the Sixers want to compete for the Eastern Conference crown, standing still is not an option. The front office has to find answers. They have to improve the roster, and they have to do it fast. Now let's move to the second story because this one is fascinating, and honestly, it might make some Sixers fans feel slightly better about one of the biggest concerns surrounding this franchise. For what feels like forever, whenever people talked about bad contracts around the NBA, the conversation eventually landed on Philadelphia. Some pointed at Joel Embiid's massive extension. Others pointed at Paul George's contract, and to be fair, it's easy to understand why. Joel Embiid is entering a 3-year extension worth approximately $187 million. His salary starts at nearly $58 million this season. By 2028, he has a player option worth more than $67 million. The concern isn't Embiid's talent. Nobody questions that. The concern is availability. He hasn't played more than 40 games in a season since the 2022 to 2023 campaign. Then there's Paul George. The Sixers signed him to a 4-year contract worth approximately $211.5 million. As he enters the 3rd year of that deal, George is set to earn more than $54 million. The following year, he'll have a player option worth approximately $56.5 million at 37 years old. And unfortunately, the production hasn't matched the expectations. Since arriving in Philadelphia, Paul George has averaged 16.7 points per game. That's the lowest scoring average he's had with any team throughout his 16-year NBA career. On top of that, he's played in fewer than half of the Sixers' games over the last 2 seasons. So yes, those contracts have been heavily criticized. But now another organization may have taken that unwanted spotlight away from Philadelphia. The Washington Wizards have reportedly agreed to a new 4-year contract worth approximately $212 million with Trae Young, and the reaction around the league has been immediate. ESPN's Brian Windhorst didn't hold back. He called it one of the worst contracts in the NBA and even suggested that moving the deal could become nearly impossible without attaching major assets. That's a stunning statement when you're talking about a player who was once viewed as one of the league's brightest young stars. Early in his career, Trae Young looked like a franchise cornerstone. By his 2nd season, he was already an all-star averaging nearly 30 points per game. But things have changed. The 2025 to 2026 season was rough. Injuries limited him to just 10 games with the Atlanta Hawks. He averaged 19.3 points and 8.9 assists, while shooting just over 30% from three-point range. Atlanta eventually traded him to Washington. The market wasn't strong. The Hawks reportedly received 2 veteran players and no draft picks in return. Then Trae appeared in only 5 games for the Wizards, averaging 15.2 points and 6.2 assists. Now Washington is betting more than $212 million that he can return to all-star form. And around the NBA, many people are shocked by the size of that commitment. Does that suddenly make the Embiid and George contracts perfect? Of course not. Those concerns are still real. Mike Gansey still inherits one of the most complicated salary situations in basketball. The Sixers still need Joel Embiid healthy. The Sixers still need Paul George playing at a much higher level. Those challenges haven't disappeared. But for the first time in a while, Philadelphia might not be carrying the title of having the league's most criticized contract situation. And that's at least a small change in the conversation. When you put both of these stories together, the message becomes pretty clear. The Eastern Conference just got tougher because Miami landed Giannis Antetokounmpo. At the same time, the rest of the league is dealing with difficult roster decisions and risky contracts too. The Sixers aren't the only team facing pressure. But Philadelphia is still facing enormous expectations. This fan base wants results. This city wants results. And after everything that's happened over the last few seasons, nobody wants another year of excuses. The talent is there. The opportunity is there. The question is whether this organization can finally put all the pieces together. As Sixers fans, that's what we're all waiting to see. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like it and let me know your thoughts in the comments. How worried are you about Giannis joining the Miami Heat? And do you think the Trae Young contract takes some pressure off the criticism surrounding Joel Embiid and Paul George? I genuinely want to hear what you think. And if you're a real Sixers fan who believes this team can still compete for something special, make sure you subscribe to 76ers Daily News. We're still pushing toward our first 1,000 subscribers, and it would mean a lot to have you with us from the very beginning. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.